All right, hello everyone. Welcome to AP Computer Science lesson this morning. First thing we're going to do is just go over some of the questions we went over yesterday in class from the AP site about objects. And a lot of it is I realized just some of the vocab that I didn't cover very well in class. So in this first example, they're talking about a book class, right? That would be our class. And then they're making an object of it. Sometimes they also call that an instance. So story is like a book object. So in code, it would look sort of like this, where we would have a book class declared somewhere else, and then we'd be inside of a different class, like a runner class, and we would have created a book called story. And they say there's two, they call them attributes for the number of pages and is it a hardcover or not? And so I'm passing them in here to the constructor, right? And so they call them attributes. I've called them all the time just variables, or sometimes they're called parameters. But basically, these are the things that we track for our book. We track its pages and is it a hardcover? And again, those are attributes or variables. All right, so back here, a lot of us went with an instance of the book object is story, and this one B would be right if this word right here were class. So an instance of the book class is story, but book is not an object. Book is the class. Story is the object. Okay, and then a lot of the other ones are similar to that. Um, so an instance of the story class. So again, story is an object, not a class. So that's why A isn't right. And then our right answer, C here, is attribute. So one of the variables that we store for the story object is hardcover. Right? Something like D again is wrong because attribute of the pages, because pages is not an object. Pages is a variable or an attribute. So an attribute of the story object is hardcover is correct. Similar one. So again, it was just the vocab I think that we're unfamiliar with. We have a student class, and we have these different variables or attributes, and then we make a Greg object. So it's be like student Greg equals new student. Um, and so Greg is an instance. So sometimes instead of the word object, they use instance. Greg is an instance of the student class. All right. And the other one, a lot of us choice here. Greg is an instance. I wouldn't say he's an instance. I would say Greg has these three attributes. The Greg object has these three attributes. So he's not an instance of the attributes. He'd be an instance of the student class. All right, this was the most commonly missed one. And again, this is just me not going over what null means enough. And null means it hasn't been given a value or initialized. If you ever got a null pointer exception in your code, that's what it's referring to, is that you haven't initialized it. So um, a lot of us picked, I guess, B and C, which would be logical based on what we've gone over in class. But once they do new thing, this one is using the second constructor, and it's just setting color to be kind of a blank string. So it actually does have a value, even though it's a blank string. And the new thing here, it by default sets the color to blue, right? So that's going to have value and everything. And then letter D is the example where we're just declaring it, but not giving it initial value. And so by default, that initial value is null. All right, and that we do that sometime in code. If you just want an example of that with a primitive, we might have int x, and we might not want to give it a value until an if statement. So we might do something like if Adam.cool equal true or something like that. Then we give x one value. So maybe in that case x is 7. Else, if Adam's not cool, give x a value of 100 or something like that. So that's an example of initially we don't set it to a value. And with objects, if you don't set them to a value, then they are by default null. Right? So in this case, letter D is the right answer. Just one more I want to go through. Okay, so in this one we have a purchase class, and we have a couple instance variables here, and they're being set by this constructor, and then we have a total amount where we print out the purchase plus the tax amount. Okay, and so importantly, they're saying they're making a purchase object P. So again, what that looks like is, if we have our code here, it'd be like they're doing purchase, P equals new purchase, and then they pass in whatever these numbers are. All right, and then once you have that, then you call the methods by the object name dot method. So I think it was total amount or whatever it was. Okay, so with a non-static method, this is how you do it. You create the object first, then call the method on it. Right, so I think what a lot of us did here is we chose A, and this is how you call a static method, right? Where you don't actually create an instance, right? You just call the class name dot method. That's like math dot power or whatever. But this method is a non-static method, right? So you make the object first, then do object name dot method name, right? And so maybe because we just talked about static in class, we got confused on this, but this would be how you call it in a static way. Since it's non-static, you create the object and then you object name dot method. I think that's a real good example of what we were just talking about. So letter A would be right if it were a static method, but since it's non-static, create the instance first and then call it with object name dot method name. Okay, that's it. Those are the only ones I wanted to review. The other ones look pretty good. Hopefully this kind of covers some of the concepts that were missed in there. The rest of class for you today, all right, is on this just e-learning folder, which I think you already found if you found this video. And there's two kind of things in here. I suppose I just click inside of it. But we have review questions to cover. And then there's another set of questions from the AP site, Unit 8 progress check, multiple choice questions. These are on 2D arrays. We didn't get to it in class. We ran out of time, so I thought it'd be a good thing to do today. It'll really help you practice the 2D array stuff. In general, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you have any complaints, the email address is cole.masterson@isd728.org. All right, thank you. Have a good day. Hopefully this all makes sense.